Hey guys, tonight we drift into a quieter corner of Olympus, a place where divine grudges stretch across millennia and bird feathers aren't just decorative, they're symbols of cosmic petness. You're standing in the royal gardens of Hera, queen of the gods, who is currently side, eyeing a creature she once deemed sacred, the peacock. Its tail glimmers with dozens of eerie, unblinking eyes. You think they'd be beautiful, but not to her. Not anymore. Hera's jaw tightens. The bird, oblivious to the tension, screeches, loud, high, and somehow both regal and annoying. You shiver. That sound. Definitely not bedtime material. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it there? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're trailing Hera as she storms through her garden barefoot, the marble cool under your feet. Each slap of her heel echoes her mood. The peacock follows at a distance, occasionally fanning its tail with performative flair, like it knows it's untouchable. Once, Hera adored these birds. She made them sacred, gave them a starring role in her iconography, and now she wants to scream into a cloud. But she's a goddess. Etiquette matters. You duck under a laurel arch as she mutters, "Stupid tail. Stupid feathers." She doesn't notice you, of course. You're more of a shade than a guest. Hera's memory palace is full of living echoes, and you're one of them now. See, the yes on a peacock's tail. They're not just fancy nature. They're the preserved essence of Argus Panops, Hera's favorite 100-eyed spy / bodyguard. The whole thing started because of one of Zeus's many unfortunate girlfriends. More on that mess in a bit. For now, Hera stops before a reflecting pool. One of the peacocks stands near the water's edge, its feathers spread like a sunset exploded backward. Hera squints. "Show off," she whispers. "I gave you those eyes to honor him. Now, you just blink at me." Historians still argue whether the eyes were meant as a mourning tribute or a surveillance upgrade, because even in grief, Hera is never not monitoring her territory. Either way, the symbolism got old fast. Every time she sees a tail feather, she thinks about betrayal, failure, and Zeus smirking through another denial. Your eyes catch a small plaque at the base of a column nearby. It reads, "Sacred Avian Patron, donated by Hera, Queen of Gods." There's a wreath carved around it. The letters are chipped, as if Hera herself tried to scratch them out in a moment of divine frustration. Now, here's a quirky bit: ancient Greek. Peasants believed peacocks were immortal because their meat didn't rot. Not true, just ancient fridge logic, but it gave Hera's sacred bird an air of eerie permanence. And maybe that's part of the problem. The birds never forget, neither does Hera. And unfortunately, neither do their feathers. You trail her through rows of silvery olive trees, each whispering in the breeze like disapproving aunties. Hera talks to herself, replaying old memories. They all told me it was a flattering gift, Argus's eyes, preserved forever. What a load of Dionysian nonsense. In truth, Hera hadn't even liked Argus that much. He was useful, tireless, great at standing still and watching things, but not exactly friend material. More like a glorified scarecrow with a moral superiority complex. Still, when Hermes tricked him and Zeus had him killed, using music, of all things, Hera felt something twist. Not heartbreak, but something colder. Disappointment. Not in Argus, not even in Zeus, in herself, for expecting anything different. So she scooped up those weird, always open eyes and pressed them into the tail of her favorite creature. A gesture of honor, or maybe guilt. Even gods get those confused. Now, she watches the peacock strut through her garden like it owns the place. And the worst part, the tail is hypnotic. Those 100 eerie circles flash in the torchlight, shimmering like watchful spirits. Hera flinches. "Stop looking at me," she says. Not to the bird, but to the memory. The peacock honks again, smug and unbothered. You follow Hera as she retreats into a stone alcove. Inside, frescoes of her past line the walls. Most feature peacocks. It's like living in your high school yearbook when you peak too soon. She sighs and slumps onto a cushion. Should have picked swans or doves. Aphrodite has it easy. You almost laugh, Hera envying another goddess, but she's serious. Peacocks, with their drama and volume, are a terrible bedtime companion. Sacred or not, she can't sleep with them screaming at shadows or trying to outpreen each other. Once, one even strutted across her pillow mid-nap. So now, she's plotting. Not revenge. Not banishment. Something sneakier. Something bureaucratic. A quiet reassignment of sacred animal duties. Let someone else babysit the birds. She's over it. The breeze picks up. Olive leaves dance. Somewhere. A peacock lets out a shriek that sounds like someone stepping on a god's last nerve. Hera winces. You feel a shift in the garden. The queen is no longer angry, just tired. So are you. You wake up. Figuratively, of course, atop Mount Citharon. It's not Olympus. Not yet. The air here smells like wild thyme and adolescent ambition. You're walking behind a much younger Hera, barefoot again. This time, because she wants to feel the earth. Not because she's furious. She's maybe 15 in mortal years. Whatever that means for immortals. And the world hasn't hardened her yet. She hums a tune you don't recognize. Probably something no one's heard since the Bronze Age. A light breeze nudges the hem of her dress, which she stitched herself from moon silk and adolescent defiance. Her hair's wild, her eyes brighter. No peacocks in sight. Just her and a boy. Not Zeus. He's mortal, or at least mortal-ish. A shepherd, maybe, or some wandering oracle's son. Historians still argue whether he even existed. His name might have been Telios, or Lycos, or something that doesn't roll off the tongue anymore. The myths barely mention him, if at all, which is exactly why you're here now. He's waiting by a stream. When Hera sees him, her whole demeanor shifts. She slows down, not to appear graceful, but to stretch this moment out longer. You feel her heartbeat pick up like a war drum at half volume. They don't speak, not right away, just sit near the water, throwing pebbles. He asks her what clouds taste like. She says, like whatever you want them to. This is where it started. Her capacity to imagine love as something gentle instead of something bargained, battled, or bartered. You watch them trade secrets the way kids swap shiny rocks. Nothing Olympian, no thrones, no ambrosia, no power. Just questions like, do stars die? And what do worms dream about? The boy, let's call him Lycos, just to have a name, pulls out a small pouch. He shows her a feather. Not from a peacock. A dove, maybe. It's plain, white, forgettable. But Hera's eyes widen like he just handed her lightning in a bottle. I kept it because it made me think of you, he says. Cue ancient butterflies. Quirky tidbit in pre-classical myths, Hera wasn't always Zeus's wife. Some say she was an independent fertility goddess tied to the earth, not the sky. This youthful version of her feels like a fragment from that older narrative, a quieter, greener, gentler incarnation. They spend the summer in each other's orbits, sometimes literally. Hera does float when she's distracted. You see them weaving flower crowns, whispering into tree hollows, building tiny shrines out of twigs to imaginary gods who don't exist yet. She creates rituals. He just laughs and follows. Then autumn hits like a prophecy. Zeus appears disguised as usual. Not a thunderbolt today, just another handsome stranger. He shows up while Hera is alone, spinning wool in a grove. He asks if she's the famous daughter of Rhea. She says maybe. He smirks. Now, this moment, this is where things change. You can feel it. The trees stop rustling. The cicadas hush. Hera narrows her eyes like her soul is trying to smell a lie. Zeus is charming, of course. But Hera doesn't fall instantly. She's polite, distant. She still thinks of Lycos. Even centuries later, a flicker of him lingers in her gaze. Later, she'll wonder if Zeus knew. If he timed his entrance just right, knowing her heart was open, vulnerable. She'll never get an answer. Gods aren't big on closure. You see her back at the stream, alone now. No Lycos. He's gone. How or why no one agrees. Maybe Zeus made him disappear. Maybe he got scared and left. Maybe he was never real, just a projection of Hera's pre-divine innocence. Either way, she dips her hand into the stream and lets the current steal her flower crown. It drifts downriver, spinning like a lazy prophecy. You sit beside her, though she can't see you. She mutters, "Love should feel like feathers, not stone." Then she stands, brushes the dirt from her skirt, and walks away from Mount Cithaeron forever. In later myths, she'll act like she's always been queenly, composed, calculating, ceremonial. But you know better. You've seen the girl who once made a necklace out of daisies and gave her first kiss to a boy who didn't make her feel small. You trail her through the shifting landscape as she ascends to Olympus. The path winds between clouds, marble columns emerging from nowhere. She passes through veils of mist that imprint symbols on her skin. Crowns, stars, thunder. When she steps onto Olympus, she's no longer the girl at the stream. She's Hera, daughter of Cronus, future queen. But somewhere inside her robes is still that dove feather. Tucked away, like a forgotten melody, she won't talk about Lycos again. Not to Zeus. Not to anyone. Maybe that's why she clings so fiercely to what she can control. Her status, her ceremonies, her birds. Especially the birds. The wedding isn't exactly small. You're standing at the edge of the highest summit of Olympus, half blinded by golden confetti that materializes midair. Gods don't send invitations. They radiate intent, and every immortal, semi-immortal, and overachieving nymph has shown up in full regalia. You squint through the glitz and absurdity. There's Poseidon, already tipsy. Apollo's tuning a lyre that's made of sunlight and questionable harmonies. Aphrodite's not wearing much. Athena's wearing too much. It's that kind of event. And there's Hera. Stunning, detached, slightly annoyed that Zeus insisted on wearing a crown made of actual thunderclouds. You watch her adjust her golden veil, designed by the fates themselves. Every stitch glows faintly with divine sarcasm. A few guests whisper that this wedding is doomed. Others, loudly chewing on ambrosia bites, claim it's the best gossip, fodder since Cronus ate his kids. Everyone agrees the venue's spectacular. You drift closer to the altar, which is made of opalized marble and unnecessarily levitates. Hera's smile is polite but tight. Zeus stands beside her, beaming like he invented affection. And maybe he thinks he did. The ceremony begins. Hestia blesses the hearth. Demeter provides the floral arrangements. Entire mountains of blooms that smell like seasonal allergies. The Hooray, those divine timekeepers, officiate with synchronized poetry, so perfectly measured. You start getting sleepy halfway through. Zeus slips a ring of pure starlight onto Hera's finger. She doesn't flinch, but you notice how she looks at it like it might bite. Here's your historical fact. In myth, their wedding was supposedly so epic that Gaia herself gifted them a magical tree bearing golden apples of immortality. The same apples that will, later, cause a lot of drama. But for now, Hera thanks her grandmother graciously, smiles, and carefully does not roll her eyes. They kiss. The sky cracks open with applause. Literally. Thunderclaps echo across the mortal realm. Somewhere, a farmer in Thessaly blames his ruined crop on divine PDA. And just like that, Hera becomes queen of the gods. Flash. Forward a bit. The honeymoon's over. The palace is quiet. You're sitting in Hera's chambers, and she's trying to undo her elaborate braid without summoning a wind spirit. Zeus is out, probably, hunting, which is his code for causing mild chaos in another zip code. Hera talks to herself again. Married a weather system with dimples. Brilliant. She walks to the balcony. The sky is clear, which makes her suspicious. The golden ring still glows faintly. She taps it against the railing. You can't help but notice this wasn't what she pictured. You remember Mount Cithaeron. The stream, Lycos. That soft quiet has been replaced by omnipresent thunder and obligation. Zeus returns, eventually, with a wolf pup he claims rescued him from a fire. He barked in the shape of your name, he says. Hera nods, deadpan. Of course he did. The pup pees on a divine carpet. Zeus laughs. Hera does not. This is their rhythm, moments of grandeur, followed by jarring drops into absurdity. She tries to maintain the rituals, offerings, festivals, prayers. But the personal stuff? That's trickier. Here's the fringe tidbit. Some early myths suggest Hera tried to flee the marriage multiple times. One version says she turned into a cuckoo bird to escape Zeus, and he tricked her by pretending to be injured. That's right, he guilt-trapped a goddess using bird cosplay. Romance. Hera keeps a painting of that moment hidden behind a tapestry in her private library. It's not flattering. You follow her into the grand hall where she hosts the gods for dinner. Tonight, it's just her, Hermes, and Hephaestus, who's crafting a butter dish that sings lullabies. Zeus is absent again. She taps her goblet with a fingernail. So, has anyone seen our king? Hermes shrugs. He's visiting Europa, in bull form. Hera takes a long sip of nectar. Delightful. Silence. Did you know, she says, that peacocks scream when they're annoyed. Hermes blinks. Are you? Not a metaphor, she adds. Still, everyone gets the metaphor. Later, in bed, Hera tries to sleep. The palace walls are thick, but thunder always leaks in. You lie beside her in the dark. Her thoughts feel loud. She whispers into the ceiling. I thought marriage meant becoming more of yourself. Not less. A peacock calls in the distance. She flings a pillow across the room. And somewhere, probably, Zeus thinks he's doing great. The moon is full and sort of smug about it. You're back in the royal gardens. But this time things feel off, like the ground is holding its breath. Hera is pacing beside a cow. Not just any cow, a very nervous, very mortal-eyed cow. Her name is Io. You've read the version where she was a priestess. Maybe you even remember she got involved with Zeus, depending on who's telling the story. But right now, she's a cow with trauma. And Hera's holding the leash. Technically, the transformation was Hera's doing. More technically, Zeus tried to hide his affair by zapping Io into bovine form before Hera could catch them mid-trest. Spoiler, Hera noticed. She always does. She leans down to inspect the cow's eyes. You blink too much, she mutters. Makes you look guilty. You moose. This would all be petty and tragic if Hera hadn't decided to take it a step further. She gifts the protection of Argus Panoptes, her favorite bodyguard, a creature with 100 eyes. Some on his face, some on his back, a few on his elbows for flair. Argus doesn't sleep. He doesn't blink much either. That's why he's Hera's top pick for keeping Zeus away from his bovine sweetheart. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Argus wasn't always just a bodyguard. In early myth fragments, he was a giant with all-seeing power who once freed the world from a chaos serpent. But by Hera's time, he'd been demoted to celestial security detail. You follow her as she leads you to a grassy enclosure, watched over by Argus. The 100-eyed giant is sipping nectar through a curly straw. Every eye rotates separately, like a conference call of paranoia. Don't let her out of your sight, Hera says. Argus nods. 12 of his eyes roll simultaneously. Hera walks off, murmuring, if Zeus wants a cow, let him milk her himself. It's not her best line, but she's tired. Back in her chambers, Hera fingers a ribbon from Io's priestess robes. It smells faintly of incense and mortal heartbreak. She tucks it into a drawer, filled with other mementos. Tokens from all the women she's punished for Zeus's wandering affections. Not because she hates them. Not really. But because confronting him head-on means shattering the marriage she's worked so hard to sculpt into something divine. Still, the guilt simmers. You didn't ask for this. She just happened to fall in love with a storm in the shape of a man. Here's the fringe tidbit. Ancient peasants believed peacocks got their eyes from Argus after his death. But in some obscure poems, it said those eyes were added as a punishment for failing to keep Io secured. Talk about mixed messages. Now, Hermes enters the scene, summoned by Zeus. His task, Frio, which he does by distracting Argus with music. Lullabies spun from lyre strings and half-lies. One by one, Argus's eyes start to close. Even Hera's favorites can be hypnotized. When the last eye shuts, Hermes slips a dagger from his cloak and, well, let's say Argus stops blinking for good. You find Hera by the reflecting pool later. She's staring at a peacock. One she summoned just minutes ago. In her hand a handful of Argus's eyes, still glimmering faintly like embers. She kneels. The bird shuffles toward her, curious but haughty. Hera weaves the eyes into its tail, slowly, carefully. Each one set like a tiny gilt gem. A gesture of mourning, maybe. Or control. Or just something to do with her hands, so she won't scream. The peacock coos. It sounds like laughter. Don't get cocky, she warns. You're not replacing him. But she knows it's already too late. The symbol is locked in. Historians still argue whether this act was mercy or madness, whether Hera was grieving Argus or using him one last time to send a message. Don't mess with my surveillance system. Either way, the peacock now carries more than plumage. It carries memory, failure, regret, and honestly, way too much personality. You trail Hera as she walks back into the palace, trailing a feather. Behind her, the peacock fans its tail. The eyes blink in the moonlight, watching everything, even you. Especially you. You're somewhere between a throne room and a very uncomfortable couch. The furniture in Hera's palace looks gorgeous, but every cushion feels like it's judging your posture. Across the hall, the goddess is glaring at a scroll. The script rearranges itself every few seconds, trying to guess what mood she's in. Spoiler, it guesses wrong. This section is all about Argus Panoptics. Yes, the 100-eyed babysitter from before, but it's more than a footnote now. Hera is building a legacy around the creature she lost. You're watching her do it one obsessive symbol at a time. She waves a hand, and a dozen palace attendants snap into action. They're painting peacocks on tapestries, inlaying feathers into goblets, even embossing tail. Eye motifs on temple doors. Hera's new sacred animal isn't just a bird, it's a brand. Here's your mainstream historical fact: in ancient Argos, one of Hera's major cult centers, the peacock was already considered her sacred bird by the classical period. Temples there featured peacock imagery, and processions included peacock-shaped fans, because apparently even worship can be a fashion statement. Back to Hera. She's inspecting one of the new wall hangings. It shows a stylized Argus, all eyes and biceps, standing over O in cow form. She squints. Too flattering, she mutters. He never had that many abs. She tosses the tapestry aside and starts again. Argus was useful, loyal, unflinchingly weird. Hera liked that about him. He never questioned orders, never blinked in protest. And he was more than a servant. He was a symbol of her ability to act independently, to wield power without Zeus hovering nearby. You stroll through her memory palace now. It's full of fragments, Argus's stone sandals, the flute Hermes used to lull him, the feathers she added to the first peacock's tail. Each object hums, with low, level divine radiation, just enough to make your teeth itch. Hera pauses before a mirror. It doesn't show her reflection. Instead, it shows every time she's been betrayed in reverse. You see her face harden. The quirky tidbit this time. Some obscure folk tales claimed Argus's remaining eyes continued to blink for days after his death. Not from life, just divine momentum, creepy. Yes, Hera supposedly kept them in a crystal box before redistributing them like macabre jewelry. Now she's in her personal temple, her version of a quiet reading room. You spot statues of her holding peacocks on one arm and lightning bolts in the other. She never uses lightning, of course. That's Zeus's brand. But sometimes she likes to pose with one, just to send a message. She reads from a scroll listing her symbols: diadem, lotus, tipped scepter, cow, lion, and now peacock. She circles the bird's name and writes, permanent, next to it. Historians still argue whether she chose the peacock out of grief or strategy. Some think it was her way of immortalizing Argus. Others believe she was simply tired of cows being associated with all of Zeus's affairs. Birds were more manageable. Except they weren't. That's what you're about to see. You follow her into the aviary she's commissioned. An open courtyard full of lush greenery and, unfortunately, about 20 peacocks. They're loud. One flaps onto her shoulder uninvited. Another pecks at her robe's hem. A third shrieks at a bronze statue like it owes him money. Hera watches, expression flat. These were a mistake, she mutters. A temple priest approaches, holding a peacock feather fan. My queen, should we install more feeders? She sighs. No, they'll just grow louder. The priest bows and retreats like he's been dismissed by a tornado in slow motion. Still, Hera won't give up on the birds entirely. They're hers now. Sacred. Unavoidable, she watches one strut across a marble floor and decides to try a new tactic. Selective affection. She names that one Quietus and pretends he listens. You sit beside her on the bench as she watches the sun dip behind Olympus. The peacocks begin their evening concert. It's part symphony, part horror film. They look beautiful, she says, as if trying to convince herself. From far away, she fans herself with a golden feather and closes her eyes. You'd think she's at peace, but then one of the birds lets out a scream so shrill it cracks a pot across the garden. Hera doesn't flinch. I will outlast them, she whispers. And you believe her. The sun rises reluctantly over the city of Argos, where everything smells faintly of olives and undercooked barley cakes. You're walking in a slow, moving parade, sandwiched between sleepy villagers in mismatched togas and a donkey carrying a statue of Hera that's definitely heavier than advertised. It's time for the Heraya, one of her annual festivals. Hera herself isn't here physically. Goddesses don't march, but her influence is stamped across every banner, every peacock, feather fan, and every yawning choir child forced to sing a hymn about marital fidelity. You glance at the faces around you. Most aren't exactly ecstatic. Some are counting the steps. Others are just trying to make it to the temple without stepping in goat poo. Everyone's trying to look appropriately reverent, but the vibe is more mandatory office picnic than divine celebration. Hera's watching from Olympus, lounging on a cloud shaped like a David, sipping diluted nectar and rolling her eyes. This is what passes for devotion now, she mutters. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The Heraya was a real festival, primarily held at Hera's sanctuary in Argos. It included races, sacrifices, and sometimes a beauty contest judged by priests. Which, to be clear, wasn't as glamorous as it sounds. Most prizes were olive crowns and lifelong temple chores. You follow one of the festival organizers, a harried priest named Eudalon, who's trying to direct a flock of children dressed as baby peacocks. They're molting glitter and complaining about the heat. Keep flapping, Nico! Hera's watching! One of the kids yells. She can't see us. She's a cloud. And honestly, fair point. In the temple courtyard, women prepare ritual offerings, jars of honey, bunches of grapes, a confusing number of small clay cows. You spot a figurine that's half cow, half peacock. Symbolic synthesis, someone explains. Quirky tidbit. In some fringe cults, peasants believed that Hera didn't actually like peacocks. She was just stuck with them. So offerings often included noise, canceling charms, or tiny stone earplugs left on the altar, hoping to help her tolerate her own sacred birds. Inside the temple, it's cool and dim. You linger near the statue of Hera, tall, imperious, holding a scepter, and a small bird that looks vaguely offended. Worshippers leave notes at her feet, scribbled on linen scraps or bits of bark. You read a few, "Please help my mother stop nagging me. Let Demetrios propose before I'm 30 point. Make the peacock shut up." Hera watches this all from above. She can hear the prayers, even the petty ones. Especially the petty ones. She turns to Hephaestus, who's floating nearby on a gyre-shaped chariot. What if I cancelled the festival? He shrugs. People would still throw barley at statues. Traditions like mildew, you can't scrub it off. Hera sighs. Maybe I should have picked another bird. Something quieter. Owls, maybe. Taken, says Athena, materializing beside her with a scroll. And doves are Aphrodites. You're stuck with flamboyant scream, lizards. Peacocks, Hera corrects, deadpan. Back in Argos, Eudolon calls for the dance to begin. A group of elderly women dressed as Olympian virtues shuffle in a slow circle, chanting verses about loyalty and seasonal gardening. You notice Hera's eyes narrow as she watches from above. They're skipping verse 3. That's the important one. Down below, no one notices. The dancers are off beat, the lyre player is asleep, and one of the fake baby peacocks has wandered off to steal a fig. Still, there's a strange charm in the awkwardness. The people are trying. Sort of, as the sun climbs higher, the festival winds down. Offerings are tallied, incense curls lazily into the sky, and Hera's statue gets wheeled back into storage, like an oversized action figure. You walk with Hera later, through the cloudy corridors of Olympus. She's quiet, contemplative. Do you think they actually like me? She asks. Not to you exactly, more to the air. The silence answers. Historians still argue whether Hera was genuinely beloved or just publicly respected. There's a difference. Reverence doesn't always equal affection. She stops at a balcony and watches a storm forming over the Aegean. Zeus is probably flexing again. I didn't choose the peacocks for the noise, she says. I chose them because they don't blink. And suddenly you understand. It's not about beauty. It's about vigilance. She can't afford to close her eyes, not even during a festival. The air in Olympus hums with anticipation, which usually means someone's about to make a terrible decision. You find Hera standing before a tall mirror, inspecting herself with a look that mixes regret, curiosity, and mild nausea. She's de-aging herself. Magic crackles softly around her feet, reversing time in increments too small for mortals to notice. Wrinkles vanish, jawline sharpens. Her hair turns from imperial bun to rebellious braid. Within moments, she looks 18 again. Goddess, standard, of course. The kind of youth that could turn a sphinx to poetry. You'd think it's vanity. But it's strategy. See, Hera is trying to win Zeus back. Not through threats, not through storms, through seduction. She's exhausted her patience. Now she's experimenting with nostalgia. She steps back from the mirror and winces. I look like one of those mortal influencers. The gown she's chosen is airy, slightly translucent, and designed by a fashion muse in a very unstable emotional state. It clings in all the right ways but doesn't scream. I'm trying. It whispers it. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In Homer's Iliad, Hera famously seduces Zeus on Mount Ida to distract him during the Trojan War. She borrows Aphrodite's magical girdle to ensure her appeal. Basically, divine shapewear. Right now, she's just using raw determination. You trail her down the polished halls of Olympus as she rehearses flirty lines. Oh, this old toga. And I didn't know you'd be here. Classics. Zeus, meanwhile, is in the throne room being entertained by a wood nymph juggling enchanted goats. Hera appears in the doorway like a breeze scented with regret and perfume. Zeus does a double take. Hera. She tilts her head. You like. He stares, thunderstruck. Hera walks toward him with the calculated sway of someone who's read every romance scroll and set half of them on fire. She brushes a hand against his shoulder. Remember when we were young? You look incredible. He murmurs. Don't I always? Quirky tidbit. One lesser-known myth claims Hera invented contouring using powdered pearl and ash from burnt offerings. Even immortals have tricks. Zeus clears the room with a wave. The nymphs scamper. The goats politely vanish. Alone now, Hera leans closer. Tell me about Europa. And Io. And that shepherd girl with the lyre tattoo. Zeus frowns. I thought we were rekindling things. Oh, we are, she says sweetly. But first, Confession time. Zeus hesitates. This feels like a trap. It is. She purrs. But you walked involuntarily. Historians still argue whether Hera loved Zeus or simply needed to win. The answer might be both. Immortal relationships are complicated. You live long enough, even your grudges get wrinkles. Later, you find her on the balcony again, older now. She let the spell wear off. The youthful dress is crumpled on a nearby bench. She's back in her usual robes, sipping tea made from ambrosia and sarcasm. Zeus, somewhere in the palace, is probably composing an apology involving constellations and edible clouds. I shouldn't have tried it, Hera says softly. Youth isn't a tactic. It's a mirage. You watch as a peacock struts by, tail glittering with all those Argus eyes. It screeches once. She doesn't flinch. I was always enough. She says more to herself than to you. And you believe her. It's well past midnight on Olympus, and you're curled up in a corner of Hera's private quarters, half hidden behind a curtain that smells like sandalwood and divine regret. Outside, the stars burn quietly. Inside, all is chaos. The peacocks are screaming again. One particularly enthusiastic bird, nicknamed Spitewing by the staff, is perched on the windowsill, howling like it just found out someone else got the promotion. Its tail flicks, scattering sacred feathers across the floor like confetti from an angry wedding. Hera storms into the room in a threadbare robe and bare feet. It's always Spitewing, she hisses. I should have made turtles sacred. Or moss. You follow her into the aviary, which has somehow gotten louder. The birds are mid-feather war. One is squawking at a thundercloud. Another is chasing its reflection across the polished floor, like it owes him money. Somewhere in the chaos, a junior priest is trying to feed them pomegranate seeds and getting pecked for his trouble. Your Holiness, he squeaks. They're highly irritable tonight. Hera glares. They're always irritable. They have one emotion, and it's betrayal. She claps her hands. Nothing happens. You see, she says. They don't even fear me anymore. Mainstream historical fact. Peacocks were kept in temple complexes dedicated to Hera and sometimes used in processions or sacred rituals. Their behavior was interpreted as divine signals. Good luck, bad luck, or someone's definitely about to be smote. Tonight, definitely smote. Hera storms back into her chambers. She lights a candle that smells like crushed laurels and frustration. You watch her scribble into a scroll titled, Alternative Sacred Creatures. A retrospective. Owls taken. Cows traumatic. Swans too Zeus. Snakes too chthonic. Cats probably too smart. She pauses. Writes rock with a face. Maybe. The peacocks shriek again. She screams into a pillow. The pillow shrieks back. Cursed item. She throws it into the fire. Quirky tidbit. In some obscure villages, people believed peacock cries warded off evil spirits. Ironically, Hera now suspects the birds are the evil spirits. She walks to the balcony. The night is cool, peaceful, until Spitewing hops up beside her and emits a screech that could curdle milk. Do you enjoy this? She asks him. He stares with those 100 glittering eyes. Blink, blink, silence. You're lucky you're sacred, she mutters. Historians still argue whether Hera truly hated the peacock scream, or whether she just associated it with too many sleepless nights and embarrassing divine memories. Either way, her affection has shifted into a sort of wary tolerance, the way you might love a child who only communicates via kazoo. Back inside, she tries to sleep. You sit with her in the dark. The walls are thick, enchanted against dreams, but not sound. The peacocks wail like tiny operatic banshees. Hera flops over. Maybe I'll make silence sacred next. She closes her eyes. A minute passes. Another scream. She groans. One more outburst, and I'm replacing them with decorative clouds. The peacocks take this as a challenge. You reach for a pillow and press it over your ears, marveling at how immortality somehow comes with insomnia. And birds. Lots and lots of birds. You're backstage at the celestial equivalent of a beauty pageant, except it's about to start a war. The vibes are immaculate, if you like petty chaos and divine shade. Hera stands in the wings, arms crossed, radiating the kind of tension that could curdle nectar. The event, a wedding feast. The problem, Eris, goddess of discord, wasn't invited, and she is not taking it well. Eris shows up anyway and tosses a golden apple into the crowd. Engraved on it, to the fairest. Cue instant emotional combustion. Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena all spot the apple and freeze. Then, in perfect synchrony, they turn toward each other. It's not subtle. It's more like slow motion disaster in a shampoo commercial. Zeus, seeing what's about to happen, does the most Zeus thing possible. He refuses to deal with it. I'll let Paris of Troy decide, he declares, washing his divine hands of the fallout like it's Tuesday laundry. Mainstream historical fact. This moment is considered the mythical spark that led to the Trojan War. Paris's judgment, choosing Aphrodite's bribe of Helen over Hera's promises of power and Athena's offer of wisdom, dooms a generation of Greeks and Trojans alike. Now, let's rewind to Hera's side of the story. You're in her quarters as she reviews her offer to Paris. She plans to tempt him with kingship over all of Asia and Europe. It's not subtle. It's geopolitical seduction. He wants power, she says, pacing. Who doesn't want power? You try to suggest perhaps a less obvious approach. She glares. This isn't mortal prom night. This is strategy. Quirky tidbit. One variant of the myth claims Hera bribed the artist painting her portrait to make her look slightly taller than Aphrodite. The fresco mysteriously vanished shortly after. You follow Hera to Mount Ida, where Paris, shirtless and inconveniently attractive, is lounging with a sheepdog. The goddesses appear in full divine glam. Hera's dress actually sparkles. She steps forward first. Choose me, she says coolly. I'll make you ruler of the known world. Paris nods thoughtfully. And the unknown world. She narrows her eyes. Don't push it. Athena follows with promises of glory in battle. Aphrodite closes with something far simpler, the love of the most beautiful woman alive, and Paris, being 20 hormonal and poorly educated, picks Aphrodite. Hera's mouth doesn't even twitch. But inside? Oh, the gears are turning? Historians still argue whether Hera's grudge was directed more at Paris or at Zeus for orchestrating the drama. Honestly, it's probably both. You ride back to Olympus with her. She doesn't say a word. But when she passes a peacock in the hall, it flares its tail, and for once, she doesn't flinch. Instead, she says, you see, that's how you flaunt something with purpose. She doesn't scream, doesn't curse. Just reworks the war strategy in her head. She'll back the Greeks. She'll sabotage Troy. She'll ensure Paris regrets ever learning the alphabet. Back in her study, she updates a scroll labeled, Grudges Active. Paris gets a gold star and a skull drawn next to his name. Aphrodite gets an entire column. You lean in. There are hundreds of names. Gods, mortals, titans, birds. Even one entry that just says, Sandal Thief, Delos Market. Hera doesn't forget, and she absolutely doesn't forgive. You're huddled in the back row of an Olympus War Council, watching gods bicker, like over-caffeinated debate students. The Trojan War is underway and Hera, she's thriving, in a highly specific, uncomfortably personal way. Her toga is pressed, her hair is flawless, her eyes are sharp enough to slice bronze. She's decided this war is her stage, and every Greek victory is her standing ovation. Across the table, Zeus lounges with the smug air of a man who's pretending to be neutral, but secretly has an Aphrodite forever bumper sticker on his chariot. Let's be impartial, he says. Hera smiles without teeth. Let's not. Mainstream historical fact. Hera was a fierce supporter of the Greeks during the Trojan War, often intervening directly or manipulating events from behind the scenes. Her distaste for Paris and all things Trojan burned with divine consistency. You follow her as she consults with Athena. They're plotting something involving divine winds, strategic fog, and exactly one misleading dream. Ares storms past sulking. He's always team chaos, but Hera's got the better war aesthetic. Later, you catch her whispering instructions to Iris, the rainbow messenger. Tell the Greeks to feint left. Make it dramatic. Iris nods. Should I add glitter? Hera considers. Tassful glitter. Meanwhile, the peacocks have been temporarily relocated to a soundproof chamber. Too distracting, she mutters. And they sided with Aphrodite last time. I saw it in their eyes. That's the fringe tidbit. A few obscure myths suggest peacocks shifted allegiances depending on the goddess of the moment. In one fragment, a jealous peacock tried to peck a Trojan diplomat. Hera gave it a gold collar and a promotion. The war intensifies. Hera doesn't fight directly. Olympian HR forbids it. But she meddles constantly. She convinces Poseidon to flood a key Trojan supply route. She inspires an archer to aim just slightly higher. She even briefly disguises herself as an old nurse to whisper sweet demoralization into Hector's ear. You find her one evening staring at a war map lit by candlelight. Tiny bronze figures move across the surface. Guided by divine nudges, she leans in and gently topples a Trojan chariot. Oops, she says. A moment of quiet settles. You ask if she ever feels bad. She shrugs. I gave Paris a chance. He chose vanity over sovereignty. And I warned Helen not to get involved with pretty men in sandals. Wasn't Helen kidnapped? That's what she says. Historians still argue whether Hera's involvement in the Trojan War was about justice, vengeance, or sheer Olympian boredom. The answer probably depends on the time of day. In a rare moment of candor, she sighs and says, "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd won that apple." You glance at her. Power over Asia and Europe, not enough. She scoffs. Please. Aphrodite gave him a girlfriend. That's what won. You sit in silence a moment. Would you do it again? She doesn't answer. Just flicks a bronze spear off the board with one perfectly painted nail. Let's find out, she says. The peacocks scream from their chamber. She doesn't even blink. There's a soft clinking of goblets, the rustle of silk, and the faint scent of roasted ambrosia nuts. Yes, you've stumbled into the gossip circle on Mount Ida. This isn't an official council or a battlefield debrief. This is where the gods loosen their sashes and spill celestial tea. You sit beside Hera as she lounges on a couch made of woven twilight. She's got one peacock feather tucked behind her ear, purely decorative, and a goblet in hand that automatically refills when she sighs. To your left is Demeter, chewing fig leaves like they wronged her. Athena is pretending to read a scroll, but is absolutely listening. And Aphrodite, she's braiding her hair and whispering very unkind observations about Poseidon's latest sea nymph scandal. So, Hera begins, swirling her drink. Did you hear about Hermes charming that mortal girl into a temple tax exemption? Athena looks up, arching a brow. With music or lies? Both, says Hera, smirking. He calls it multitasking. This is the part of Olympus they don't include in temple murals. The Olympian ladies' hour, where alliances are soft, insults are sharp, and reputations get shredded like old scrolls. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Greek gods were often portrayed as capricious and deeply flawed in classical literature. The Iliad and Odyssey both depict the gods meddling in human affairs while gossiping about each other like they're in a divine soap opera. Quirky tidbit: in a few fringe folktales, there's a lost comedy play, Mount Olympus, The Brunch, where Hera and Artemis prank Dionysus by convincing him he's allergic to grapes. Allegedly, he stopped drinking for 3 days. Back to tonight. Hera is basking in the moment. I'm not saying Zeus has commitment issues, but he tried to rename the stars above Thebes. Not my problem. Aphrodite snorts. Did he give you a consolation at least? No. Hera deadpans. He gave me peacocks. The group groans sympathetically. You watch as Hebe, goddess of youth, and Hera's daughter, floats in with a tray of glowing pastries. Mood food, she says, handing Hera something that looks like a sugared thundercloud. Hera takes a bite and chews reflectively. Tastes like denial. Athena, cool as always, finally speaks up. So what's the next move with Troy? Hera wipes her fingers with a napkin made of starlight. I'm thinking weather manipulation. Or I bribe the muses to write Paris out of history. Subtle, murmurs Demeter. Subtle is for owls. Hera replies. The peacocks wander in, uninvited. Spitewing always on cue, lets out a honk so loud it tips over a nectar pitcher. Hera sighs. Why do I even let them in here? Because they look amazing in candlelight, says Aphrodite, tossing one a grape. Hera eyes her. That's how you won. Oh, honey. Aphrodite winks. I always win. Tension flares for a heartbeat, but then Hebe intervenes with more pastries. That's how things work here. Wars start with apples, and they end with snacks. As the evening winds down, the goddesses recline into a looser kind of silence. Gossip has been served, ego stroked and bruised. Somewhere outside, a mortal army is marching to war, utterly unaware that the fate of their city was just casually discussed between courses. You sit beside Hera on the edge of her couch. She doesn't say much, just watches the flames in the hearth curl like long, forgotten arguments. They think we're immortal because we never change, she says softly, but that's the curse, not the gift. The peacocks settle beside her quieter now, as if even they understand it's time to rest. You're hiking, slowly, and very much against Hera's will, through the hills of Nemea. She's in what you'd call spy mode, except she's also wearing full battle, grade sandals and muttering about hydras. She's taken a day off. A real one. No peacock meetings, no scrolls of grievances, no casual divine sabotage, just hot springs, mineral mud, and maybe a massage from a satyr who knows his way around tension knots. But the minute she steps into the sacred grove, you just know something's going to go wrong. The birds are too quiet. The air smells like foreshadowing. Let me guess? She mutters. Something's waiting in the reeds to ruin this. She's right. Mainstream historical fact. The region of Nemea was associated with one of Heracles' famous labors, the slaying of the Nemean lion. But long before that, it was known for its lush sanctuaries, including one sacred to Hera herself, where rituals of purification and healing were held. Today, Hera wants a mud wrap. She is not getting a mud wrap. She approaches the springs, eyes narrowing. A lone peacock is perched on a smooth rock, blocking the path. It flares its tail, all glittering, ice. Each one a reminder of Argus, of all the things this day was not supposed to be about. Move, she says. It honks. She steps forward. It honks louder. Behind her, a bubbling hiss emerges from the reeds. Something slithers. You hear a growl that sounds like someone dragging a drum set through a canyon. Oh, for Olympus' sake. Hera sighs. Is that a hydra? It is, in fact, a hydra. 3 heads, each one looking deeply offended at being interrupted mid-nap. Its scales shimmer like oil on water. It hisses. One head sneezes. The peacock, completely unfazed, hops onto the creature's back like it planned this chaos. Hera stares at the scene. Ancient predator, divine bird, thwarted vacation, and slowly sits down on a rock. I just wanted hot rocks and silence, she murmurs. You sit beside her. The hydra cautiously backs away. It knows better than to fight a goddess on her off day. Quirky tidbit, in one obscure tale, it's said that peacocks can control lesser beasts of chaos using residual magic from their Argus eye inheritance. Which means Spitewing here might actually be commanding that hydra like some kind of screeching serpent whisperer. Hera doesn't attack. She just raises one hand and calmly snaps her fingers. The hydra vanishes. The peacock, startled, honks indignantly and flaps away, losing a feather mid-flight. Hera snatches it from the air with one graceful motion. That's going in my petty scrapbook, she says. You return with her to the shrine bathhouse. The attendant, a satyr named Lankos, greets her with trembling fingers and 2 cucumber slices. Everything all right, my lady? No. She says deadpan. Bring me whatever mortals use to forget. She settles into the hot spring, shoulders sinking slowly into the mineral, rich water. Her eyes close. A second peacock screeches from the roof. Lonkos, she calls, without opening them. Tell me that was your stomach. No, my lady. Then get me a towel. And a spear. Later she lounges in a white robe, sipping something herbal and bitter. The air is quiet now, save for a distant splash and a faint, uncertain honk. You sit nearby as the steam curls around ancient columns. The hydra is gone. The peacock's feathers still shimmer on the water's edge. Hera gazes at the horizon. They say queens don't rest, she says. But sometimes, even war machines need oil. You glance at the spy menu. Thinking of rebranding? She smiles faintly. Maybe. Peacocks and pedicures. She doesn't mean it. But for one slow, sleepy moment, she lets the quiet in. You descend a narrow staircase lit by flickering flames, the air growing cooler and heavier with each step. The scent shifts from sacred oils to something richer, riper. Like old pomegranates left in a bowl too long. Hera is ahead of you, robe swishing faintly, her expression unreadable. You're heading into the underworld. Not to punish, not to spy, but for a tea date? Yes, with Persephone. Hera's trying a new thing, bonding. The two haven't spent much time together. One's the queen of the gods, the other's queen of the dead. Their domains rarely overlap, unless someone's dragging a soul somewhere it shouldn't be. But Hera's decided that maybe, she and Persephone could share some insight, or at least vent about husbands who don't listen. At the gate, Cerberus sniffs you both suspiciously. Hera offers a sugar cube. 2 of the 3 heads accept, the third sneezes. You walk through meadows of asphodel and past shades who shiver at Hera's presence. It's not fear. It's awe. Even the dead remember reputations. Persephone greets you in a chamber full of warm reds and twilight purples. Her crown is woven from vines that never rot. She hugs Hera politely. You get the feeling this is going to be awkward. You are correct. Tea is served by a skeletal attendant in an apron that says STYX and IP. The first course is honeyed bread. Hera eyes it suspiciously. No seeds, I hope. Persephone laughs, low and sharp. No magic fruit. Promise. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Persephone ate pomegranate seeds in the underworld, which bound her to return for part of every year. It's one of the oldest mythological metaphors for seasonal cycles and personal consequence. The 2 queens sit. The silence is sticky. So, Hera begins. How's Hades? Persephone sips her tea. Deadpan as ever. They chuckle. Barely. You're halfway through a fig tart when it happens. Hera pulls out a small pouch. Inside, a single peacock feather, glowing faintly. She places it on the table. I thought you might want something from up top, she says. Persephone tilts her head. Because, Hera replies, I'm trying. Silence. Then, thank you. And then, inevitably, it gets weird. Persephone reaches for a dish of dried fruit. You want a pomegranate segment? Hera pauses. As it cursed, not deeply. You watch as she hesitates, Queen of Olympus, hesitating over fruit like it's a battlefield. Quirky tidbit. In some minor cult variants, Hera was once offered pomegranate juice during a New Year's festival and mistook it for wine. She reportedly made everyone at the altar eat olives dipped in it as divine punishment. Hera finally bites. The segment is tart, a little too juicy. She dabs her lip with a napkin. It's not bad, she admits. Just sticky. Like marriage? Persephone offers. They both laugh. And just like that, something softens. You sit through a long, winding conversation about eternity power, what it means to hold others' fates. Hera listens. Really listens. Persephone watches her the way someone watches a closed door creak open for the first time in centuries. Historians still argue whether this visit ever happened, whether Hera ever acknowledged Persephone as more than Hades' seasonal accessory. But you were there, and it was real. As Hera rises to leave, Persephone walks her to the gate. Can visit anytime, she says. Hera smirks. Maybe next season. And as you both ascend the stairs, she whispers, "That feather was from Spitewing. May he scream in the underworld next." You chuckle. Even peace offerings carry a little petty. The door creaks open like it knows it's not supposed to. You step into a chamber no mortal, or even many gods, have seen. This is Hera's private vault, her secret scroll library, her grudge sanctuary. Every wall is lined with shelves, and every shelf holds tightly wound scrolls tied with colored ribbons. There's no dust. Of course not. The air is dry, faintly floral, and charged with something old and complicated. A single floating lantern drifts overhead, glowing just enough to read by, but not enough to make things feel cozy. Hera enters behind you, carrying a small feather duster and a teacup. You don't ask why the Queen of Olympus dusts her own archive. Some rooms demand reverence even from their owners. "This," she says, "is where I keep track of those who should have known better." She gestures to a section marked A, B, ribbons in dark crimson. You step closer. The labels are meticulous. Achilles' possible exception. Rude but useful. Aphrodite still insufferable. Apollo occasional eye. Roller. Watch harp usage. The next shelf is CD. One scroll simply reads, "Cow situation unresolved." This is the library of petty grudges. Mainstream historical fact. In mythological tradition, Hera's wrath was often portrayed as calculated and long-lasting. Unlike Zeus's quick fury, Hera specialized in slow, burning vendettas, often targeting not just offenders, but their descendants. You watch as she pulls a scroll marked Paris of Troy from the PQ section. She untees it with the care of someone reading an old diary entry, both amused and mildly annoyed by her younger self. There's a column labeled offenses and another labeled actions taken. Notes in the margins read, "Did not choose me. Bad taste. City destroyed. Still felt unsatisfying. Would not apologize. Or moisturize." She replaces it gently. Quirky tidbit. Some lesser known stories claim Hera's grudge scrolls are magically updated. If a descendant of someone on the list commits a similar offense, the ink glows red. This is allegedly why the scroll for Sisyphus is still warm to the touch. You move to another wall where scrolls are bundled into categories. Divine eye rollers. Festivals that were disappointing. Inadequate offerings. One thin scroll reads simply, "Temple goat that kicked me, 435 BCE. There's a small hoof print in the margin. "Is this healthy?" you whisper. She shrugs. "Wouldn't know. Never tried forgetting." In the far corner is a locked chest. She touches it but doesn't open it. "That one's private," she says. "Even for you." You nod. Some grudges are raw, not funny. Even for gods. She turns back to the main room. "You know," she says, "I once considered burning it all. Starting fresh. And I couldn't remember who deserved what." She laughs. "So do you?" A peacock feather flutters from a nearby scroll. She picks it up, twirls it between her fingers. The birds are in here too, of course. Every scream. Every honk. They think I don't keep track. She walks to a section marked Symbols and Regrets. Inside are diagrams of scepters, diadems, temple blueprints, and feathers. So many feathers. One scroll simply says, "Maybe lions instead." The ink is smudged, maybe by a teardrop, maybe just time. Historians still argue whether Hera ever truly let go of any of her grudges. Most myths suggest not. But here, in this room, you see something different. Not hatred, not rage, just memory. Organized, labeled, preserved. You ask gently, "Why keep all this?" She looks at you and says, "Because forgiveness fades. But documentation, that's eternal." She smiles. And you realize she's not trapped by her grudges. She's just very thorough. You leave the room together. The door closes with a sigh, and you swear one of the scrolls giggles. The temple is quiet. For once, the peacocks are asleep. Tails furled like faded fans, heads tucked beneath wings, their usual operatic squawking reduced to the occasional sleepy puff of feathers. You follow Hera through her garden in the early dawn. She's wearing a robe not made of gold or starlight but simple, pale blue linen. The sandals are gone. Her steps are soft. She moves with the kind of tired grace that comes from having lived too long with symbols that stopped feeling symbolic. Today, she's making a change. You trail her to the reflecting pool where the first peacock tail was ever dipped in Argus's memory. The stone still bears the faint shimmer of old magic. Hera kneels beside it, and from her satchel she pulls a scroll. One last entry, one last regret. She reads aloud. Not for you, not even for the gods, but for herself. I made them sacred because they watched for me when I could not. Because they never slept, never questioned. Because they reminded me I was never safe enough to rest. She exhales. But I've watched too long. You look down. The scroll is not a curse, not a banishment. It's a release. She whispers something soft in a tongue you don't recognize. Older than Olympus, older than stone, and dips the scroll into the pool. The water absorbs it, glows, flickers. The nearest peacock lifts its head, watches her. Doesn't screech. From beneath her robe, she pulls a final feather, spite wings, probably, and lays it gently on the water. The feather floats, then vanishes. Let them be birds again, she says. Historians still argue whether Hera ever officially changed her sacred animal, or whether this moment ever happened. But if they'd seen it, seen the way the garden held its breath, the way even the olive trees seemed to bow, they'd know better. She stands, brushes off her robe, and walks slowly back toward the palace. Behind her, the peacocks ruffle quietly, then one opens its tail. Still full of eyes, yes, but less haunting now. Less a warning, more a memory. A beautiful, excessive, deeply complicated memory. You catch up with Hera as she enters the marble corridor. She doesn't look back. I won't remove them from the frescoes, she says, but I won't summon them anymore. And that's the closest a god gets to closure. She turns to you, half smiling. Maybe next century, I'll try turtles. Then she vanishes down the hall, robes whispering behind her. And the peacocks, they sleep on. Now the palace is still. The hallways glow gently with moonstone light, and Hera's footsteps have faded into memory. You sit in the garden a little longer, where the silence feels like silk. Soft, draped over every branch and pebble. Somewhere in the distance, one peacock stirs. It flutters but doesn't cry. The drama is over. The symbols have quieted, and the goddess who once crafted grudges into constellations has let go, if only slightly. You listen to the water ripple. The scent of olive blossoms floats on the air. A breeze passes gently across your skin, and with it, a sigh of something older than myth, something like peace. The stars above Olympus burn slower now. Less like fireworks, more like steady candles. And the gods, those dramatic, dazzling forces of nature, sleep. Even they must rest sometimes. Your eyes drift closed, not from fatigue, but from fullness. You've seen Hera as few ever do. Not just queen, not just jealous wife, but builder, balancer, watcher. A goddess who once loved a boy by a stream, who braided power into her very posture, and who now, finally, has given herself permission to exhale. The garden dims. The final feather falls. No more watching. Just rest. Sleep well.